Hi, my name is Amaya McCoy, and I will be analyzing the different perspectives of the Syrian refugees. Of the two articles I will be comparing, the first is about Pope Francis, and it focuses on how Pope Francis went to the island of Lesbos and he decided to bring back three families of Syrian refugees with him to Rome. The second article is about how thankful a Syrian refugee, Ahmed Al-Abad, is that him and his family got the opportunity to come to the United States to flee the acts of violence that were going on in their homeland. In the article to the left about Pope Francis' visit to the Greek islands, there are 8 themes that are to be explored within this article that are highlighted in blue. These points are definitely brushed upon within this article, such as Pope Francis himself, how society views refugees, the refugee overload within Greek lands, and the religious aspects of where these three refugee families will be staying. The article definitely focuses on Pope Francis more than the refugees, even though the focus of his visit was to advocate for the Syrian refugees. It quickly shifts to him setting more of an example for the rest of the world by taking in these three families with him as he goes back to Rome. Within the article to the right, there is a focus on the Syrian family who is grateful for the opportunity to escape their trials in their homeland. And I want to focus on the words that are listed by Explore for this article because there are only 3 relevant ones. Even though there are 4 listed, 3 of them are relevant, which is equality, refugee, and Syria. And I feel like Al Abad, the Syrian refugee husband and father that this article focuses on, is definitely underappreciated, and it is evident in the amount of words that are listed to explore. Now, once does it talk about how he'll adjust to society, yet Pope Francis's article focuses on how society views refugees. Al-Abad is definitely a refugee, but we do not focus on him as much. And I feel like that is because Pope Francis himself is such an important figure, not only in Rome, but in the world. And Al-Abad is just a single refugee who will get lost in the number of U.S. citizens. But I feel like his story is one that needs to be heard because he's giving the U.S. a heartwarming thanks for taking in him and his family. But, we will further analyze this and see how this plays out. The first photo with the Pope on the left shows a child that seems to be grateful of the Pope for making an appearance to the island of Lesbos. Once you concentrate beyond the child's act of gratitude of him kissing his hand, you begin to see that the Pope's visit to Lesbos, regardless of the reason, was a sign of refugees to remain hopeful. They all crowded the fence to see the Pope and beg, quote unquote, for help, according to Brindley, the article writer. The picture portrays that they were excited to see the Pope, but the article contradicts that very statement by saying that they were begging him for help. Um, there looks to be signs of hope in the eyes of the refugees as they reach for the Pope's attention. Beyond his attention, they seem to be seeking comfort um, for their surroundings that they are in. The fence also seems to be like a barrier that is keeping them from their freedom. It seems to be a sign of captivity. In the second photo on the right, you see a father and a husband who looks extremely grateful for the opportunity that he was given by the U.S. He seems to want to convey his sincerest gratitude for the kind act that Kansas City has shown by taking him and his family in. And within the article, there is a statement about how if Americans are fearful, how Al-Abad would react. This moment implies that Americans will assume that he is a threat to their safety just because he is a foreigner. Although Al-Abad assures America that he just wants to fit in and he wants to take advantage of this opportunity to strive for a better life for his children. And to me, for Americans to assume that just because he's not from America, he doesn't seem to come from America, that he would be here to harm us. And this is just amazing because in the picture, he seems to be, you know, so humbled and so ready to receive any kind of knowledge or anything that we would be willing to give him, resources or anything. But we would, but in the interview for the article, the fact that an American would just automatically assume that he's here to harm us is very appalling. Whereas within the first photo, getting back to that, when the article writer, Brentley, mentions how the refugees are begging for help, yet it seems like such a joyous photo because the Pope is smiling. It looks like people are smiling, like they want to, be able to meet the Pope. But when you bring in that phrase, begging for help, it tends to bring the joy of the photo down. But I see the Pope as a sign of hope and how the refugees should persevere regardless of what circumstances they are in right now. So, both photos, I see the hope in their eyes. I see them fighting for better days. The gesture of the Pope was applauding, but the way that Brindley displays it, the focus was not even about the refugees. The main topic of this article was that of the Pope and how his visit started controversy. And so the terms used within the article, provocative, implied that the Pope had bad intentions when going to Lesbos and taking the three families back to Rome with him. Because it implied that he was trying to start something between other countries that focused around the Syrian refugees. It implies that he was, poking the bear by bringing refugees back to Rome with him. Another word that was used that kind of pointed the Pope in a negative light was scripted. And this word was to describe his words of encouragement towards the Syrian refugees. And it kind of shows that his words of encouragement weren't really sincere and just because they were scripted. And so this article definitely places the Pope in a negative light since he went to the island of Lesbos with good intentions, but his intentions were not well received by others. This article focuses on the positive outlook that Al Abad is taking in order to get his family adjusted to the new life. He also strives to utilize the opportunities that he is given to empower others like him that may be in a similar situation. He explains how he got to the U.S., but does not dwell on that because he is hopeful for the future of him and his family. This article is different from the Pope's because it focuses on Al-Abad and how he wants to utilize this experience in the U.S., whereas the article with the Pope is so revolved around the Pope that it overlooks the very reason why he went to Lesbos, which was to advocate for the Syrian refugees and thank the Greek islands for allowing them to stay there. I feel as though that advocacy was overpowered by the negative implications of his kind act. I compare these two articles because one focused on the figure that was trying to help the Syrian refugees, while the other focused on the actual refugees. Al-Abad's article did not get as much attention because he was simply a refugee, but his story touched people in various ways. It touched actual refugees, non-refugees, and everybody in between. The heartwarming thank you made his story more relatable to the average person. The Pope's visit, a thoughtful one, but his purpose was overlooked due to his method of execution. All in all, Al-Abad deserved more attention than he was given, and I hope that you all see how his article was not seen as important as the Pope's article.